Hello there, and welcome to episode 4 of the VictorPrep Vocab podcast. Let's start with the previous words from last week. I'll go over them once, think about what they mean, try and remember. I'm sure you remember. The words were ossify, potentate, solecism, and attenuate. Ossify, potentate, solecism, and attenuate. Can you remember what those mean? Well, ossify means to turn into bone to become more stiff and rigid. Potentate means a powerful leader or a powerful person, like a Julius Caesar or the Pope. Solecism means some sort of grammatical mistake or blunder with words, usually, or it could be a social blunder too. And attenuate, that means to make weaker or to reduce in force. Now, those were our 4 words from last week. I hope you remembered them all. If you didn't, don't worry. Take a little bit of time to review the previous episode, and also take some time to write some example sentences out. Our 4 new words are aggregate, abstemious, castigate, and paradox. That's aggregate, abstemious, castigate, and paradox. So let's get started with aggregate. So aggregate is spelled Aggregate, aggregate. And in this sense, we're going to be using it as a verb, but the word can also be used as a noun and an adjective, and I don't want you to get too confused. In general, the meaning is always about the same, so if you know one meaning, you kind of know all the meanings. We're going to be looking at the verb form, and aggregate as a verb, to aggregate, means to bring together. To collect lots of things and bring them together into one body, or one total, or one mess. So an example sentence might be, I aggregated together all of the flies in my backyard and tried to make a fly circus. Sadly, they wouldn't obey me, despite my trying to bribe them with marmalade. Anytime you're bringing together lots of things to form one bigger thing, you are, in a sense, aggregating things together. Our second word is abstemious. Abstemious. That's spelled Abstemious. Abstemious. It sounds complicated, but means something quite simple. It's an adjective, and abstemious means to be sparing or moderate in eating or drinking. In general, abstemious usually refers to moderacy in eating or drinking, not eating a lot, being less greedy, but it doesn't always have to refer to eating or drinking. You could say someone lived an abstemious life because they didn't spend a lot of money despite having the money to spend. In general, it means someone who's not greedy, they're not self-indulgent, they're not indulging to excess. Monks are known to live very abstemious lives. They have no Lucky Charms for breakfast and absolutely no sugar in their porridge. Our third word today is castigate. Castigate. That's Castigate. That's a verb, and it means to punish or to criticize severely. Castigate is not a weak word, it's a strong word. If you castigate someone, you're punishing them harshly. You're not just saying, oh, you did a bad thing. You're really being strict with them and stern. It's for doing something very bad. So if you were in school, you're not necessarily going to be castigated for just doing some work that wasn't so bad. But if you kicked the teacher's dog, for example, then you might be castigated. Bill Clinton was castigated for his infamous affair with Monica Lewinsky. Our fourth word of today is paradox. Paradox. That's P-A-R-A-D-O-X. Paradox. Now, this is a little tricky to explain, so we might have to take a little bit of time over this one. But a paradox is a statement that in some way is self-contradictory, that seems wrong when you first read it, but in reality expresses perhaps some truth there. Let's look at some examples. So, an everyday paradox you might have heard is that you can save money by spending it. Now, at first, that doesn't seem to make any sense. How can you save money by spending it? Surely that seems to be contradicting itself. It doesn't seem to be right. But when you think about it a bit more, you could say, well, if I spent more money on insulating my home, perhaps I could then save more money through reduced heating bills. So, a statement that at first seems wrong, seems to contradict itself, when you examine it a bit more closely, perhaps there's some possible truth there. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, Hamlet says, "I must be cruel to be kind," which sounds also like a paradox. How can being cruel be kind? It seems wrong at first when you read that sentence. I must be cruel to be kind. Another example from a famous novel of a paradox is in Animal Farm, which is an amazing book by George Orwell. And in that book, there's some famous words that say, "All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others." Well, when you look at that sentence, all animals are equal, they're all the same, but some are more equal than others, how can that make any sense? How can some animals be more equal than others? Well, this is hard to explain. I don't want to give anything of the book away. But as you'll see if you read that book and you apply the understanding of that book to our modern world, you could say that all people in theory are equal, but some are more equal than others, implying we have perhaps an unfair society in many ways. Paradox can also mean, in general, any person or thing that has a nature of contradicting itself. You may know a person who themselves is a paradox. If you knew someone who was a very super kind, always nice person, but then on some instances just became super mean, you may say he's a bit of a paradox. He has these contradictory qualities, which it doesn't seem to make sense. So a paradox is, in general, some statement or proposition which it seems absurd or contradicting itself, but expresses some possible truth. In general, it can also mean a person, thing, situation that has a nature that contradicts itself. I don't want you to confuse you too much with this one, because it is a confusing word in and of itself. Just reading about paradox online gives you many almost essays describing what it is and what it is not. It's quite complicated, and when I was doing my research on this word, I realized how complicated a thing it is. Indeed, many people often disagree whether something is a paradox or not. But just think of my examples, try and think of your own examples, or even look online and look at some other famous paradoxes. For example, a famous paradox is if someone comes up to you and says, "I always lie." Are they lying right then, or are they telling the truth? Are they a liar? It's a tricky one. Think about it. So that's our 4 words for this week. And now I'm going to give you my 4 example sentences where I'm referring to one of the words in each sentence without using that word. And I want you to think about the meaning of the sentence and then think about which word I'm discreetly referring to. My father was severely punished for sneaking away from school to go to the fair. He was beaten with the cane the following day. All of my friends from various cities came together for a leaving party the night before I set off on my around-the-world voyage. Recently, I noticed a strange phenomenon. When talking with people, I realized that when I said fewer words, people seemed more interested in what I had to say. I once knew a millionaire who was very sparing with his wealth. He mostly cooked for himself instead of going to restaurants, and he even drove a beaten-up old pickup truck. I hope you got which word I was referring to in each sentence. If you didn't, please listen again, think about the words, and think about the meaning of the sentence and which word it might refer to. Our 4 words of the day were aggregate, abstemious, castigate, and paradox. And now, straight after the podcast, I want you to think about the words, think about their meaning, and test yourself a little. If you're having trouble, or if I'm going too fast or too slow, please let me know. You can get in touch with me on Twitter. That's at SamFold. That's S-A-M, Sam, Fold, F-O-L-D. You can email me too at sam.fold@gmail.com. Please feel free. I will read the emails. I will get back to you. It's not a big deal at all. I really, really want to know what you're thinking about the podcast. Are you learning the words? Are you using the podcast and remembering them? Any advice or tips for me would be greatly appreciated. Really, truly. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time, or rather, speak to you next time. Bye-bye.